Okay, so I think we're live. So, welcome to all our Facebook viewers. This is our second episode of Story Women of Iowa, our State Fair edition, since the Iowa State Fair is going on right now. And this Story Women of Iowa event was brilliantly conceived by the always gracious Heather Gudenkoff. And we had so much fun doing it our first chat last winter that we decided to do it again. This time with an Iowa State Fair theme, and we've added a few new faces to our group this time around. Tonight, unfortunately, Heather is not going to be able to join us because she had a family emergency. So Julie Stone is taking over technical responsibilities, and she and I will do our best to keep all the wheels on the bus here. So it might require a little patience from everyone. So also each of our authors tonight are donating one copy of their most current novel. And our viewers are invited to post any questions or comments. And your questions and comments in the Facebook thread, in the Facebook feed, will serve as your entry into our giveaways that we'll take care of probably in the next week or so. So I'm Callie White Vimbali, and I'm a Des Moines area true crime novelist, true crime mystery novelist. This is my most recent novel, The Monsters We Make. Everything's backwards, and I always do this backwards. Every time I try and hold anything up, I can't tell my right from my left. So as I said, I'll be moderating tonight because I have grudgingly camped at and attended the Iowa State Fair with my husband's family for the last 20 years. And even though I hate heat and greasy food and crowds, it's like my worst nightmare every single year. I go because I'm married and I kind of feel like I'm legally obligated. So that's my state fair story, and I'm sticking to it. So we're going to kick things off with some brief introductions and then get into some questions, some fun questions for everyone. So I'm just going to go down the grid. So Julie, if you want to start for us, if you can tell us your name, what you write, your most recent book, and if you are a regular state fair attendee. Honest answers only.
All right. I'm Julie Stone, and I write romantic comedy with older heroines. My latest book is also I Can't Go Left Right. He's with the band. You can see it. Which is a story of a woman who was a groupie in a previous life and gets a chance to hit the road again with her the band that she followed 20 years ago. I am also an Iowa author. I live in Ames. I am a regular state fair goer. However, I tend to like to only go to the concerts. So I go, I do all the things, I eat the food and go on the slide and do all those things. But generally speaking, if I'm at the fair, it's to see a concert.
All right. Thank you, Julie. Rachel, if you would like to, Rachel Mans McKinney.
Absolutely. So my name is Rachel Mans McKinney. I am also a Central Iowa author. I live near Ames as well. My most recent book, my first book, is also this year's 2022 All Iowa Reads. It's called The Butterfly Effect. And it's also set in Ames. So if you don't get enough Ames, this is how to get it. I write book club fiction. So, usually plots with twists and turns and usually a happy ending. I love the fair, and I'm actually setting my next book at the fair. And so I have set aside several research days this past 2 weeks, and tomorrow even, to go to the fair and fill myself approximately 98% full with cheese curds.
I'm your girl if you need details. I'm your girl. Tracy, would you like to go next, please?
Sure. I'm Tracy Garvis Graves. I live in downtown Des Moines. My latest release was Heard It in a Love Song, and the trade paperback will be released on January 31st. We kept a lot of the beautiful cover, but made a few little tweaks for the trade paperback. I write contemporary fiction with a happily ever after. So I like to take elements of women's fiction and elements of romance and kind of smash them together. I am a sporadic fairgoer. I have had periods of time in my life where I have been at the fair multiple times, and then other periods of time where I haven't even made it to the fair. And I haven't made it there this year. I hope I do make it because I want a corn dog, which is probably the big reason I go to the fair every year.
Great. Thank you, Tracy. Nicole, would you like to go next?
Yeah, happy to. So I'm Nicole Bart. I write domestic suspense, and my most recent book is Everything We Didn't Say. Came out in October, I guess. It was a book of the month pick in October, and then it released in November. It's the story of Juniper Baker, who returns to her small town in Iowa to solve a double homicide. It's fun. I think it's fun. I am currently not at home. I'm being in Iowa. I don't know if I'm allowed to be here, but I'm actually in Minnesota right now. I'm in a cabin in Minnesota. I know, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. My husband and I snuck away to get some work done, and that's why the lighting is terrible, and I hope that my internet stays. But yeah, as far as the state fair goes, I am born and raised in Iowa. My husband and I lived in Vancouver for several years after we were married, but I have never been, not once. I know. I feel terrible. We have a little tiny local fair that I go to from time to time, but I've never been to the state fair. So I'm in Minnesota, haven't been to the fair. Do I get to stay?
You are forgiven. I mean, my opinion is you're forgiven. We get it. Rachel Yoder, would you like to go next?
Yes, I'd love to. Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Yoder, and I live in Iowa City. And I only have one book. It's called Night Bitch, and it has a big pile of meat on the front. And I guess this book, I would say it's literary fiction that's horror adjacent. So I really like kind of playing with genre, like horror and sci-fi and myth, and kind of incorporating all of that into a realistic story. And let's see. I have lived in Iowa for 13 years, and the last time I went to the state fair was 13 years ago, after 2 months after I started dating my husband. So I haven't been back, but I need to go back because while we were there, we said if our relationship worked out, we would return to the state fair and get an airbrushed t-shirt, those ones of like with the palm tree and the heart and like the people walking in a sunset, and that says Seth and Rachel. So we are due for our t-shirt.
My husband and our great love story also started at the fair. So
I think, that now I'm like, I feel like I'm an honorary Iowan because like that was the beginning of my love story.
Thanks, Rachel. And Kimberly Stewart, last but not least.
I've been laughing my head off at all you people. I like the lines, our great love story also began at the fair. How many can say that? Raise your hand in the chat. How many fell in love by the funnel cake? My great love story to my husband, Mark, and I really do love him. He's from Minnesota in South Dakota. I dallied in other Midwestern states. So my name's Kim Stewart. My last book was, Heartland. Set in Iowa, totally a love story to Iowa, and there are people there who fall in love as well. And then I actually have a new nonfiction book coming out in a million years because publishing goes so slowly. So we'll have 8 more of these before it actually gets into print. I'm okay with the fair, guys. I mean, I'm from Des Moines, so I actually worked at the fair. All of high school, worked at the fair, worked at the pork festival, also held at the fairgrounds. I would say it did sully my feelings about the fair because, first of all, if you're working in the hot environment of the fair all of the days, somehow the shine comes off a little bit. And I would say that was probably the most pronounced moment for that was when we finished the fair one year and we removed, I will not say what restaurant this is because it sure as heck is still there, but we removed the deep fat fryer to clean it out. And there were scads of crispy locusts in the bottom of the deep fat fryer, guys. Didn't know it. Probably there the whole darn time. I mean, the fries were delicious. Don't get me wrong. and full of protein.
Well, could
But
you put them
that
on a
prob-
stick?
Oh, we should have drizzled a little chocolate, stuck an Oreo in their mouths. It would have been a bestseller. But, the fair's never been quite the same to me since then. Although I must say, Botters, pharmacy, chocolate, ice cream, peppermint sandwiches, all of those words, I'm not sure they'll order. Those will change your life. So I still go for that.
That sounds about par for all the state fair food, to be totally honest.
The locusts or what?
Yes, quite honestly. So I just popped onto Heather's page, and we have viewers already commenting from Nashville, Wisconsin, North Carolina, Minnesota, Waterloo, and Bondurant, my hometown. So welcome from all over to our viewers who are popping in. So I have a very short state fair quiz. I'm not going to participate since I have this deep, complicated relationship with the fair myself. So my first question, does anyone know when the first Iowa State Fair was held? Any guesses? When, and I'll add this, where?
I don't know, but somebody needs to talk. So I'm going to guess something extremely wrong. I'm going to say it was held in 1972, and it was held in Fort Dodge. I know neither of those things are correct, but someone needs to break the ice.
Somebody in the comments knows. 1854 Fairfield?
Yes, that's it.
Good job,
Somebody
Laura.
got it in the comments. Very nice. 1854 Fairfield. It's a long, long running fair. And it feels like I've been at the fair since 1854.
Wow. Was there Googling involved? I have to ask. Did that person know that, or was there help? I don't mean to be a difficult novelist here, but research.
I don't know.
So I'll just ask for a ballpark guess here. Any guess for the highest overall attendance record in state fair history?
2 million? Numbers.
Not quite. So it's over 1 million. The highest was in 2019. Sadly, I was at that fair. 1,170,375.
Wow, that's a lot of Iowans and pork chops.
Yes, for the overall fair.
Sorry, Callie. Can I just say, this is hilarious to me that you are the moderator, because I've known Callie for a long time, and every year she's like, I'm going to the fair. I got to talk to you after the fair. And you're the moderator.
It's complicated. It's complicated. I am sadly the perfect person for this job. I can't tell you how much it depresses me to say that. Okay, I've got a few more fun questions. So this is another ballpark guess for the weight of the record-holding big boar. Every year the Iowa State Fair names the big pig that weighs the most. So any guesses on its weight?
300 pounds. Is it bigger than that? Is
Way
that not
bigger.
enough? 500? 525. Oh my gosh, someone said 2,300.
Yeah, 1,335 pounds.
Oh my
in 2012, and sadly, I saw that pig in 2012.
It had a lot of locusts.
It did. It ate a lot of deep fried locusts.
It ate a lot of deep fried locusts.
And then the next year it was bacon on a stick.
Yes, for sure, because they, I believe, go to market as soon as the fair is over. Okay, so one last one. How many pounds, how many pounds of butter does it take to carve the famous Iowa State Fair butter cow?
I'm going to take this opportunity to show a picture of the butter cow.
Oh, perfect.
Oh, good.
There he is.
That's nice. It's really nice.
Yeah. So that for our viewers that are not from Iowa, you might want to explain what the butter cow is.
How can we possibly
It's just a cow made of butter.
It's a cow
Just
made
a cow made of leather.
Sculptor. There's a sculptor who sculpts the cow, and
Oh.
an extra person like Michael Jackson or whoever. Who is it this year? Do we know?
It's the Music Man.
Music Man.
It's a scene from the Music
Harold
Man.
Hill.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, it's great.
Our chat, someone in our chat got it. Francis O'Sullivan. It's over 600 pounds. 650.
Wow.
600, 650.
I just want to say how much I disagree with this quiz because we all got into writing so we wouldn't have to do math.
I agree. I'm on Team Rachel.
I'm sorry. All right. Enough quizzing. I wouldn't know these answers either. I mean, these exact numbers, like I'm down there every year. It like how many people, what's the record breaking for how many people go? I don't know. Tons, like too many. It's a nightmare. But anyway, sorry for those of you who love the fair.
Everyone.
So since Julie already shared the butter cow photo, a few of our authors shared their own state fair or like county fair type photos.
Yes.
And we're going to share them here with you.
I'm going to share them, and then if they're yours, go ahead and jump in and say what the picture is of.
That's me. This is Nicole Bart talking. These are my kids. And at our local county fair, we have a pig wrestling contest. So you get in groups of 4. They start a timer. You're in this giant, I think there's another picture of what it looks like, but they start a timer and you have to catch the pig and put it in a barrel. There you go. There's the pigs. There's the barrels. You have to put the pig in the barrel and you have to kiss it. And whoever does that first wins. So I don't know if that makes me a good mom or a really bad mom that I let my kids do that. But yeah.
That's amazing. How did your kids do?
My daughter was terrified. Her girlfriends wanted to do it and she was like, oh, cool. That sounds like fun. And then she got there and realized she actually had to catch a pig. Didn't know how she felt about that, but yeah, they did pretty good. I mean, once it starts and you get in it, once you're dirty, who cares, right?
Right.
Right. All right. I think I know who this is.
Oh, that's my photo. So that is not my camper. Let me say that first. But because I camp at the fair, we drive by this camper every single year. They set this camper up, and it is literally hanging over the top of a really, really steep hill, and it's just propped up on blocks. Like sleeping in that gives me nightmares. Every year I drive by it, and it gives me nightmares.
Go ahead, Kimberly.
There's no like tweaking every year. Like every now they're like, oh, we forgot the thing last year, but this time we won't have cinder. It's really, they keep those things right there to just make it level.
Yep, it looks like that every single year, and like hundreds of campers down, thousands of campers look just like that. They're all propped up all over because the campground is very hilly, and they're all just like jacked up on these crazy blocks. And
Don't move too fast.
Yeah, I don't like that. I would not sleep there. Okay. Who is
this is me. One year I got asked to judge the state fair parade. Another like hilarious, like how do I get invited to do these things? It was me and these 2 local DJs. And I was like, I can't think of anyone who complains about the fair more than me, but all right, sure, I'll judge the parade.
Very good.
I'm sorry, it's funny every time. Kelly, what do you mean why did they call? Because you're a local author? Local author, Kelly wants to judge it. Yeah.
Like, what are you judging? Like, what are the categories?
You rate the different people in the parade.
Somebody has to be the Simon Cowell. Somebody has to be the.
I was definitely very Simon Cowell-ish because everything about the fair makes me grumpy. So.
Okay, there's one last, and it's mine. And as previously mentioned, there I am at Night Ranger, like 5 years ago.
Is that in the grandstand?
That is in the grandstand. And Night Ranger was not the lead group, but that was the group I was there to see. It was like Night Ranger and then someone bigger than Night Ranger, which I know it's hard to believe there's someone bigger, but that's why I was there.
Julie, how many concerts would you guess you've been to at the grandstand, at the fair, at the grandstands?
Probably 20, maybe more. Yeah, I started going in high school. I saw Jefferson Starship was my first state fair concert with the outfield. That'll date you right there.
So there's a reason why you wrote a book about rock bands and concerts.
Yeah. So
okay, so now I have some more writing focused questions for our authors, and then I'm going to try and jump back and forth between the chats. If any of our viewers want to ask any of our authors questions, just post them in the chat or in the Facebook comments, and I'll keep going back and forth to check them and ask our authors. So the first question I have for everyone is, how many of you have set a scene or chapter in one of your books at the Iowa State Fair? I know Rachel, she said that at the beginning. And it's your new book that you're working on.
Yeah, it's one that I'm just starting to work on. Yep.
Okay. I have one. I have a scene in actually the Monsters We Make. It's under the grandstands. Anybody else? No? So how about scenes or chapters at other major Iowa events besides the fair?
I have a scene on the island that was set at a dorm at the University of Iowa.
Oh, which dorm?
I don't remember. I'm not sure. I have to get out my own book and look it up. I'm not sure if I mentioned the actual dorm. It's just that there's a scene that happens at a dorm when the main character goes to visit his friend who is currently attending University of Iowa.
Yeah. Tracy, that reminds me of something Julie and I were just talking about last night. I'm at the point in my writing career where I need to create an Excel sheet of my character names, because I can't remember character names from like the first book I wrote 15 years ago. Do any of you have that problem with like any stories you've written in the past? Like you can't now
I need that same Excel spreadsheet. I thought about offering it up to one of my readers, that in exchange for my whole entire library of a copy of every book I've written signed, will you please do that for me? Will you write every main character's name, every minor character, anybody that shows up? Because I have a fear that I have repeated myself somewhere and don't know it.
Have any of you? I mean, some of you have like 70%. How do you keep all those names straight and not accidentally? You do what?
No, you cut out. You cut out of me. Some of you have what?
I was saying some of you have like 7, 8 books, like a lot of books. How do you keep all those straight and not accidentally repeat yourself?
I don't think I am.
No. It's embarrassing if people come up to you emotional and will say, that person really spoke to me. And I'm like, who? Did I make that person up? Moved me too. But it's been a while. I'm old, you guys. I'm getting old. It's 17 years of making up fake people. I also go through all of my children's and dogs' names in my house, all through of them. You know what I'm saying? Like to my own kids, I'm like, you, what's his? Oh, Thea. So I can't remember the fake people. I can barely do the real. Nicole, I bet you're great at this because you have a billion books.
Yeah, Kim, I totally relate to you. I have 10 books, and people come up to me all the time talking and thinking that I remember these books. Not only do I not remember the characters, sometimes I don't remember the plot. Like, what was that book?
Yeah.
My book that came out in November, people want to talk about that one yet, and I'm editing my next book that's coming out in June, and I'm so into that book right now that when people want to talk about everything we didn't say, it is hard. I need like my own cliff notes or something that I carry around.
I think Rachel Yoder has the secret, because Night Bitch, the characters aren't named. It's the boy, the mother.
That was smart.
Like, genius, because 20 years from now, you'll be like, I don't have to remember the names of anyone from that book.
Yes. And I mean, even with that, there are like a few minor characters. I think I still know their names, but then it's all, it's even now, it hasn't even been that long. And I'm like, oh, that's in the book. Yeah, that's a great section. Thanks. I can't imagine what it'll be like with like more than one book. You're all astonishing. So.
Okay, so how about have any of you, and I've read everyone's books here, and for those of you who have multiple books, many of your books, so I know the answer from a few of you, but have any of you written scenes or chapters at a major like national event or landmark outside of Iowa, like a big, somewhere well known or a big event? Built a scene around it or a chapter?
I built a scene around Rockefeller Center in New York, which was an issue because really I was trying to get the character across the street from Rockefeller Center. And also she was walking. She was very upset. And so she walked from a really long way away. And so I had to clear it with people in New York. People in New York are very, if you are from New York, I love you. And also you're very particular about geography. And so I had an editor living in Manhattan at the time, and she put me through my paces of that's too far to walk. You take this train and then this train. And I was like, come on, suspend a little bit, just little imagination. And so we finally got a place where she could walk, where her bougie ex-boyfriend would deign to live, but still get to Rockefeller Center and then across the street. It was the logistical issue. I wouldn't do it again.
That kind of leads to my next question. Like, if you have written a scene or a chapter in a really well-known place, like the challenge of that, what are some challenges of writing something? Because when I wrote a scene at the fair, you have to, it's kind of what Kim was saying, you have to get the geography right. You can't, if you get a detail wrong, someone will inevitably leave a review about it on Amazon. It's really unpleasant. So it's a lot of pressure. How about the rest of you?
Mine is kind of funny. And it's quick, and it's not actually a super well-known place, but because my book was chosen as the All Iowa Read, it was read by a lot of Iowans this year, which is fantastic. And there's a scene in my book that takes place at a casino. And I was informed by people who live near the casino that the casino was not built yet. And I'm like, you're right. Like, you're right. Like, I looked up every other detail in the book, but in my head, that casino has been there, extending to that time. But it was not built until 5 years later in sort of the timeline of the book. And I'm like, well, luckily I don't name it, but you knew what I was talking about.
Right. Because it happens, right? There will always be an eagle-eyed reader who picks up on something like that. It's so much pressure.
Yeah, in my book, it follows the tour of this band, and I had to make sure that all of those venues existed. And the only one that I think I messed up was Kansas City, and then my editor caught that one. She's like, "That's not there. No one would go there." And I was like, "All right," changed it. But yeah, I mean, mine was just sort of a logistical trail across the United States.
And one of our Facebook viewers pointed out that Heather Gudenkopf's last book, The Overnight Guest, I forgot about this. She uses that famous tree in the middle of the road in Iowa.
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of a well-known quirky road. And it plays a major part in her last book, The Overnight Guest. Okay, so this is kind of a broader question for everyone, but for those of you who have books set in the Midwest, what challenges have any of you found in writing stories set in the Midwest, unique to trying to write the Midwest?
All of my books, except for a couple of them, are set in the Midwest. And the reason I did that is to sort of, not have so many challenges, because it's a place that it's either similar to Iowa where I already live, or I've set it around Iowa. So I have set books in Kansas City, in Rochester, in Minneapolis, in Chicago. I tend to stay, I like the Midwest because I can be pretty certain that I'm getting it right. But I've also set books in places that I have never been before, and then had to rely on Google and Google Earth and research to make sure that I got it right. So.
How about the rest of you? Yeah, Nicole.
So my editors in New York have a very hard time understanding what small town life is like. And I live in a very tiny town in the northwest corner of Iowa. There's about 7,000 people. So whenever I write something in about, I don't know, popping next door to get a cup of sugar, or not leaving your keys in the car and leaving it running if it's cold outside, they're like, this would never happen. like, no, really it does. Like it happens all the time. This is small town life in the Midwest. So I feel like I'm constantly educating them on what it's actually like to live out here.
Yeah.
Kim, I remember at your book launch for Heartland, they were saying that the cover was scary because no one really goes outside at night. And you were like, yeah, we do. We aren't scared to go outside when there's, nothing.
Yeah.
I
They
remember
thought
that
it was
vividly
they thought it
from
was an imminent I think they thought it was an imminent burglary or violent crime. They're
Mhm.
walking
Yeah,
at
look at
night.
that. Look at those
Yeah.
scary
Look at
people.
how menacing that is. Yeah, they also thought that they took them all out, but there were stars. And their beta readers said, "Is it an alien invasion?" They all live in New York. So they thought it was like either really horrible light pollution or they just thought it was aliens. So I had to say, no, we see all of that, especially in rural Iowa. I mean, you have a sky littered with stars. So yeah, I didn't make a ton of friends in those conversations. And I think they still think I'm lying. Nicole, I'm totally with you. They also kept asking me to put things like when they would be out, when the characters in this book were out kind of in rural areas, they said, and then did they pass a lot of abandoned warehouses? It's like, no, not a lot of abandoned warehouses. They're like, but really, because of the economy? I was like, no, there are fields, a lot of fields and fields of beans and corn. No one abandons them. They are worked.
I'd say one of the challenges for me has been less about scene setting and more about getting some of the complexities of how Midwestern people talk across, because we have this kind of double speak that can be sort of passive aggressive, but also kind and probing. And so when people are like, oh yeah, I'm fine, like we know that doesn't always mean that. And sort of getting that to read through the text and push against, having it be able to be read by people outside of the Midwest to understand how those conversations go as well. My editor is also in New York, and she got to this point where this main character is having a conversation with her mother, and she's like, they actually need to say what they're feeling. And I'm like, really? And it was like the hardest thing for me to actually articulate like a clear conversation between these two people instead of talking at angles. But it was necessary at that point in the book, but it took me a very long time to write that part in the book.
Yeah. Say what we actually think and feel. Like, that does not compute to this Midwesterner. Like, we don't do that. I wanted to ask Rachel Yoder. I'm remembering your book, you don't name the city where your story is set, but it is Midwestern. It felt Iowa City-ish to me. Is that the right interpretation?
It is so Iowa City.
Okay,
And
okay.
if you are from Iowa, people were like, I know that parking garage that you're talking about. I'm like, really? Or they're like, I know that creek. I know the creek where she like turns into a dog. And hearing all of you talk, I really think that character and setting are so inextricably linked, right? Like they inform each other so much in storytelling. And so for this book, I kind of wanted like a middle American mother, like I wanted this sort of ideal of mom right in the middle of the country. And then to like use that character in that setting and subvert that with this sort of horror story, this sort of transformation. So in that way, setting it in Iowa City really, really worked. And it wasn't something that I thought about ahead of time. I always say I don't have a very good imagination, so I like to kind of use the things around me. But I think it did like wind up working ultimately.
Yeah. So I pulled a question from, this was on Tracy's Facebook page. This is from Christina. This is back to my comment about character names, and I'm getting older and like losing track of character names. She wondered if any of you have used the same character name a second time on accident and someone caught it and like made you change it or pointed it out. Have any of you had that happen?
Nobody's caught it yet, but I feel like I've done it. Maybe not a main character, of course, but I feel like maybe some minor characters might share the same name, but nobody's brought it to my attention yet.
I feel like every one of my heroes starts with the name Jack, and I have no idea. Every single time. And I'm like, oh, wait, no, that's not right.
I did one. I had a name at the end of my second book and did not realize it, and had the same name in a short story later. And nobody caught it. And I didn't even catch it till years later. Like it took me, like there was a real delay before I realized I had done it.
I'm also someone who doesn't remember character names in books that I've read. So like I can love and enjoy the experience of the book and be like so deeply invested and tell you every plot point. And I could not, like, if I was dangling over a cliff, I could not dredge up that name. Like there is no possible way, even if it's, it's just not going to come to me.
I think you'd be dangling over a Ferris wheel to go with our theme, not a cliff.
We had another question from Robert in the comments, and he wondered if any of you have podcasts, and I know a few of you do. So this is a great time to chat about those. Maybe Kim will go first because I know Kim has one.
I do. It's called For Real with Kimberly Stewart. So we just launched last fall, almost a year ago. And it has been to use a Midwestern phrase, it's been a hoot. We've had so much fun. I've had it's so fun for me as, I'm sure I would guess you women would identify with this. Oftentimes we are asked about our books and about our work. And it is so fun for me to ask other folks about how they approach the work. Mostly I've had authors and a lot of them kind of in the faith space. And it's just a super interesting conversation for me to have, first of all, because I'm just curious. And also I've been on the other side of that. And I know within 20 seconds who actually read the book. You know what I'm saying? Like, within about so your name is Kimberly Stewart and you wrote a book about a blue sky and a man with flowers. Tell me more about it. Like we've all been on that part where you're like, oh man, just take like 25 minutes, just 25. So I read the whole darn thing, which nearly kills me, but it's so fun to have a more informed conversation. So, and also when you work in a gig where you have a book release at the most once every year and a half, if you're really, really cranking it, a podcast is so fun because it's like a little mini release with immediate feedback we only do every 2 weeks. But anyway, that was to answer very long answer to yes, For Real with Kimberly Stewart, launching again soon in September.
I have one as well. It's with two other book critics. It's called Blind Date with a Book, and we set people up with book recommendations based on dating app questions. So we have people fill out questions like, what could you give an on-the-spot TED Talk about? What would be your ideal Saturday? And we get to recommend them 2 books, and it's a game show where we compete for our favorite indie bookstores. So we get to link to our indie bookstore of our choice in the show notes if we win. It gets very competitive. And we're in our 2nd season, and I love it. We try to have guests on who are artists and authors and makeup artists and like just very interesting people, and learn a little bit about them too.
That is awesome. What was it? Blind Date with a Book.
Yeah, Blind Date with a Book.
Oh,
and my co-hosts are Elena Nicolau, who does culture writing for today.com, and Kristen Evans, who's a book reviewer and writer.
How fun. Rachel Yoder, do you still do a podcast?
I don't. It's defunct, but I think the episodes are still up. It was called The Fail Safe, and who knows if one day it will come back. But I started it during the 2 years that I wasn't writing, right after I had a baby.
Oh.
And writing was just not there for me. And so I thought, well, what if I talk to other writers about the really hard times in their careers and the times when they felt like they were failing? And so got to have these amazing, really honest conversations with really successful writers about like, do they even believe in failure? What does it mean to fail? And how they kind of got through the harder parts of their careers and writing lives.
I remember listening to the Laura Vandenberg interview where she talked about abandoning an entire novel, which was shocking.
It was shocking. And I remember how she said, I deleted the whole thing. And then she went and jumped in a lake.
Yes.
She was like out at this retreat and she had been toiling and and she realized she was sitting at her desk and she's like, I have to throw the entire thing away. Like I know how to write it and I have written it incorrectly. And she threw it away and she had this like ecstatic moment when she went and jumped in the lake. And I was like, yes, that is what I want to hear. Like, thank you for sharing that story. Because we need those too, in addition to, you know, like the dream stories of the novel that was channeled and, you know, wrote itself. So yeah, they're still up on Apple Podcasts. You can take a listen if you want.
Yeah, I remember listening to it years ago, driving somewhere. I do not have a podcast. You're all welcome, by the way. But I do have a radio interview horror story where I phoned into a radio interview one time when my kids were really, really little and home. And I had no childcare back then. It was just always me on my own. And I remember locking myself in my bathroom, in my master closet, and huddling under all the clothes hanging there to buffer the sound of them screaming on the other side of the door and banging on it. Like I just had to get through this 10-minute radio interview and like the house is burning down on the other side of the door. That's my memory, my fondest memory of podcasting radio interviews or whatever. So this is a question for everyone. I love these stories and I want to go one at a time to hear from everyone. I would love to hear your funniest book event story, like your most humbling book event or your book event that went awry or didn't go as planned. I love these stories. So let's start with Julie, if you don't mind.
Yeah, when my second book came out, I was doing signing at a coffee shop in Iowa Falls. You know, some people go to New York and Seattle, and I was in Iowa Falls, which is great. It's a great little town. And there was a man there and he stayed and he stayed and he stayed. And then finally he came up at the end and he was talking to me about how he had been contacted. He collected vintage photographs. And he had just been, it was right when Mrs. Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children came out. And he had been contacted to put those as because apparently he's well known in that space. Anyway, long story short, then he says, but my real passion is vintage pornography pictures. And like, I was just like, I had no idea. Like, I was like, I have no response to that.
Hold on.
Hold on. About an English teacher. No? Okay.
He waited to have that conversation.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm so sheltered. I didn't know vintage pornography was a hobby.
Oh, I didn't.
I thought we didn't do that quite then. Wow.
No, but yeah. So that's probably my strangest interaction
strangest man interaction.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Rachel Mans McKinney, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. So mine's another kid one. So I think you'll relate to this. My book came out in the height of COVID, right? So it was December 2020. All my book events were online. And so I was doing a reading for a book event and it was part of a larger panel. And so I only had like 7 minutes. I had my 7 minutes and I was going to read a part of my book. So I read a part of the book that was kind of compelling. It was the only scene in The Butterfly Effect that has drug usage. It references sex. It's kind of, it's a little bit more risky. I thought it would be a good clincher, but like section. Anyway, I'm reading this part. I'm in the middle of it. My children come in. I had at the time, let's see here, a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old, and they just stand at my shoulders. And they like, I can't like move them away at that point. I'm sort of swatting them and they're giving ghost eyes to the camera, just like, and it's all going straight over their head. I'm just plowing on at this point to get my 7 minutes done. I was told it went great by people later on, but it was certainly a sign of the times.
Oh, sadly, I have been there. That's a good one. How about you, Tracy?
I have a rather disturbing tale of and this happened at my first signing. It was at Beaverdale Books. This was back in 2012, and it was just my daughter was with me for this one. I don't know where everybody else was, but my daughter had come, and I was really nervous because it was my first real signing. It was shortly after signing with Penguin, and On the Island was currently out and everything, and so I made it through the signing okay. And then at the end, people could come up and either have me sign their book or take a picture or what have you. And this lady, I noticed she was kind of hanging back. I hope she's not watching. Really hope she's not watching. She kind of hung back, and then she came up and she kind of made a big, like announcement of, what she was about to say, and everybody kind of got quiet. And she proceeded to inform me. She showed me this giant scar that she had that went from like her shoulder to her wrist. It was very, very severe. And she proceeds to tell me about being stabbed and dying. But she came back because God told her that she needed to come back because I was going to write her next book for her. And so she wanted to tell me about this in person, and everybody just, it's like a record scratch. Everybody just went completely silent. My daughter was horrified, and it was really a difficult experience. I was very inexperienced at signings. It was my first one. I did not know how to handle it. And then she went on to go in detail about how I would be helping her and we would be doing this together. And so, extricated myself the only way I really knew how, and Alice, the wonderful owner of Beaverdale Books, kind of swooped in and well, we're all done here, folks. So I've never had anything that's topped that experience. It was really scary at the time, and she did write to me for quite a while, telling me her plans and wanting to know my input and things, and it was really weird.
Oh wow. Oh wow.
Yeah, it was unsettling, but it's okay. Nothing bad
It's
happened.
okay now, right?
Yeah, I was very nervous at the time. I just wasn't sure where I fit in with what was clearly something that was not, logical.
Yeah. Tracy, I don't know if you've been writing, when you started writing, if like phone books were still more of a thing, and like your home phone number was in the phone book.
Yeah,
I had a little problem with that with my first.
Yeah,
book.
absolutely.
I realized you have to unlist your phone number.
I don't know if people, that might have been right on the cusp for me, but I will say that we got an ADT alarm system literally the next day, because some of the things she said made me and my family and my daughter was really upset for quite some time. It made us, we put some measures in place.
Yeah.
I didn't know if it was going to be my own personal misery, Stephen King misery situation, because some of the things that she said were just, they were hard to hear.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that threat or that correspondence died off within a few years, and I haven't heard from this person in a long time. So
yeah. And hopefully she's not watching.
Hopefully she's not, but if she is, hello. Still not helping you.
Yeah. Yeah. How about you, Nicole?
Okay, so when my debut novel came out, my agent had said to me, say yes to everything. Like anybody who calls you and wants you to do a signing, say yes to them. So I did that. Every library, every church group, you name it. If people wanted me to come and sign, my answer was yes. So I had been doing this for weeks, possibly going into around 2 months then. And one of my last ones was at a small town, and it was during their like summer celebration. So I was super excited because as I pulled into the town, like the whole main street is roped off. There are people everywhere. There are thousands of people. And this library is right on Main Street. It's right in the heart of everything. And there's this huge poster that says, author Nicole Bard is here for a signing. Come on in. I'm so excited because I'm thinking I'm finally going to get some people at this signing. Well, I go inside and the librarian thought the same thing because she had set up at least 40 chairs, like right in the middle of the library. And there was food laid out and drink and the whole 9 yards. And it was supposed to start at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and 3 o'clock came. Not a single person was there. 3:05, 3:10, this librarian is in tears. She's like, I worked so hard on this and I spent so much money. And like, I'm consoling her because nobody's here. And finally, the door to the library bursts open. This older woman comes running in and she comes right up to me and says, are you the author? Is your name Nicole Bard? Are you here to sign books? I said, yes, I am. I'm so glad that you've come. Have you read my book? And she goes, oh, honey, I'm not here for you. I'm here for the air conditioning. And she proceeded to sit down in the second row and take a nap in the air conditioning. Yeah, so that was fun. But you have to be humble as an author, I guess.
You do. I dare say every one of us on this panel have probably had that happen. Those painful events where you watch the clock and you're like, come on, one warm body.
I had an event on this book at a library, and it was sparsely attended. And then the librarian said, well, I just found out we were up against bingo. So.
Well, bingo,
All right.
With that.
How about you, Rachel Yoder? I keep using your last name. It's very weird. I'm sorry.
It's okay. You can just call me Yoder if you want. So speaking of Yoder, we have something in our extended family called Yoder Family Weekend, and different people take turns doing the programming for it. There's usually like a speaker who comes in, and everyone gets together to discuss things, and there's potlucks. So long ago, before my book came out, my brother was in charge of organizing this one. He's like, Rach, why don't you come give a reading at Yoder Family Weekend? I was like, sure. Great. That's a great idea. I'd love to do it. So it happened this June. And when I arrived, even before I arrived, I realized how it might not have been the best decision for me to agree to read from my book entitled Night Biatch to, many older conservative Mennonite family members. And as I ate dinner and sat beside my cousin, he was like, wow, this is going to be horrible. And I'm like, it really is. It's just going to be like the worst thing that's ever happened. So I proceed to give, the world's most awkward reading. Everyone's very, very nice. And after it, I'm like, glad that's over with. My Aunt Esther, who I love dearly, who's in her 90s, walks over to me very sweetly. She has a little gift bag, and it has a beautiful gift she has thrifted from the Mennonite thrift store, of course, right? She wants me to have. I'm over by the car. I'm like, Aunt Esther, thank you so much. It's so sweet of you. And I was like, I have a couple extra copies of the book. Would you like a copy of Night Biatch, Aunt Esther? And she looks at me. She smiles. She pats me on the shoulder, and she turns around and walks away. So it was incredibly mortifying. I don't know what I was thinking. Everyone was very sweet, and I got a beautiful little picture out of it from Aunt Esther. So thank you to her.
Oh my God. Can't even get your aunt to take it. I have been there. Can't even get my family members to read it.
She was like, no way I'm even saying the title. Goodbye. I knew I was going to kind of get that reaction. So I was a little sort of like, hey, Aunt Esther. She's like, no way, Rach.
I have to pop in because my family is nearby too. And I had a book signing in my grandma's hometown. My dear beloved grandmother, she passed away a couple of years ago, but she was still alive then. And when she came into the room, she walked up real close to me and gave me a hug. And as she backed away, she said, I have something for you. And she pulled a hanky out of her purse and put it in my shirt because she thought my shirt showed too much cleavage. And she just tucked it right in there. Thanks, Grandma.
That's amazing.
it like stuck out, the fluffy ends. It was so funny.
I need to try that with my daughter. Quite honestly.
Yeah.
That's amazing. How about you, Kim?
Oh my gosh, I need an inhaler. I'm laughing so hard. Rachel, that story is top notch. I mean, the whole thing is start to finish. I wondered with your last name how the Mennonites felt. And now I know. Hilarious, Aunt Esther, for the win. And I didn't know there were thrift stores involved in Mennonite gifting. So that's good.
The Mennonites they like have Mennonite thrift stores. They love a good deal, a good thrift.
Oh, that's a great story. I would say probably my most mortifying, and I have several from which to choose. But for this evening, I had a book event. When I drove up, I knew there were a couple alarm bells. It was a bookstore / pharmacy, so that's a curious pairing. But like Nicole, man, my publisher was like, you go everywhere. Anyone who asks you to do anything, you say yes. So I said yes. So I walk in and there's a table. The pharmacist meets me at the front door and says, oh, we have a little table set up for you. I was like, fantastic. It's near the back of the store, stack of books. It was for 2 hours. I sold one book. It was to the pharmacist. It was a pity purchase. And about 3/4 of the way through, a woman came up to me and said, I just have a quick question. I said, yes, please. Any question? Do you want to know about my process? Are you kind of curious about like word counts? Like, what do you want to know? She said, I am looking for enema kits. And not one bit of this is embellished. I said they are right here because that's where he had sat me. My table was by the enema kits. There were three to choose from. So that's probably my low point.
Your book was very moving.
Oh, boo. She never would have known. She had no idea. Should have thrown one in. Help her in her
Kim,
time.
I can't believe this, but my funniest book signing is also a pharmacy / bookstore.
We will have to talk about this later.
Is it the same one?
Reminded me. It was. Nicole's story reminded me. I got invited to this little tiny southern Iowa town. They had like a pancake festival or something. So there were supposed to be huge crowds. And the woman who invited me said she owned a bookstore. So I show up and it's actually as you said, a pharmacy. Yeah. And she just had a rack of like a spinning metal rack of
like at the airport.
Yes, that was her bookstore. And because it was this pancake festival, she set the table up in the display window. I sat in the display window next to a Johnny on the spot. I am not making this up. Like your first book, you say yes to everything. I literally sat in the window and all these people were walking by, like staring at me like, who is this weirdo sitting in the window? And I'm just like,
wait, is it John? Is it John on the spot a portable toilet? Is that what that is?
Yes.
Oh,
Kelly, that's like a bad dream. It's a bad dream.
Yes.
It's like if you had been naked, then she said, take your clothes off. Then it would just have been a bad dream.
I would have not felt worse if I had been sitting in there naked. And like Kim, people would come in and ask for directions like, where's the Plinko game? I don't, I'm just like, yeah. Then I'm like directing him to Hemorrhoid Cream. And I sat there like 4 hours. It was all day. It was awful.
Gosh. That's a marathon signing. Also, I've never heard that story from you. The window puts it way over the edge.
Yes.
Like you were on display.
I probably never told it because I have so many to choose from. It's like, I forget how many bad ones I've had. Yes, indeed. I can't believe we both had a pharmacy story. That's really depressing.
Well, thank you everyone for coming.
Yeah.
Thank you everyone for coming to our therapy session today.
Oh, yeah.
That was very therapeutic.
Yeah, very
therapeutic.
That is exactly what's happening. I have to read this. This was on Heather's page. somebody wrote a horrible book signing. Oh, I just lost it. It was too funny. Darn it.
I have it. Is it Susan Peterson's about
the albino snakes? Please read
Yes.
the
So
albino
so somebody was at a book signing at a downtown San Antonio library, and there were many homeless people in the audience, and it was set in Texas, and it was a women's fiction. So one of the men raised his hand to ask a question. He wanted to know if there were any albino snakes in the book, and if not, had the author considered that? Yeah. The author was extremely gracious and took time to give him a thoughtful answer.
That's amazing.
Now I think we should all put an albino snake in all of our next.
I love the specificity of that question. If someone asked me that, I would be happy to answer that question. Yes. Thank you.
Like,
amazing.
And then after that, you gotta try and write it in, right? I mean, you have to. Amazing. Okay, so I have a couple last questions for you. Someone, first, one of the viewers wanted to know if everyone's favorite fair food. And for those of you who've never been to the fair, maybe you have a favorite food from some other event or something else that's tradition or whatever. So Julie, why don't you go ahead and go?
I always get to go first. My favorite are the ribbon potatoes. I don't know. Is that what they're called? They like fry them on like a skewer, and they when you get it, it's just like overflowing. Yeah, that's my favorite. And then also always very much like every year what the new fair square is. I don't know. Rachel, you've been to the fair. What's the new fair square? Do you know? No?
I don't even know.
No, I don't know what it is.
It's like they're like fancy Rice Krispie treats.
Oh, okay.
Right outside where the funny vegetables are.
There's okay. I know what you're talking about now. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's my favorite. And then I would also give a pitch for the Church Ladies Pie.
Oh, yes.
That's been there, I think, since the fair opened.
Forever.
Oh, such good pie.
How about you, Rachel?
I would also like to give a shout out to a classic fair food that was probably around in 1854 in Fairfield, Iowa, when the fair started. And that's the cheese curds. I mentioned those at the beginning, and honestly, can't have a fair without them, in my opinion.
Those are good. Mine is the Barksdale chocolate chip cookies, the buckets, which I can't eat anymore because I can't eat gluten anymore. But we used to buy the whole buckets and eat the whole bucket. Love those. How about you, Tracy?
I feel really like my choices are really boring, but I like the corn dogs, I like the funnel cakes, and I like the lemonade shake-ups.
Oh, yeah.
Those are so good. I want all of that right now.
I thought the same thing when we started talking about food that I would wish I had some fair food.
Yeah, especially the lemonade. That I'm really thirsty, so that sounds really good.
How about you, Nicole? I know you said you've never been to the fair, but maybe the county fair or some other event.
I haven't been to the Iowa State Fair, but the Clay County Fair in northern Iowa near Spencer, I went to every year with my dad. We'd watch the Arabian show, but they have an entire, it's built in there, and they do mini donuts. So you don't just get donuts, you get a show, because the donuts like plop out and they go down the little track in the oil and then they get flipped over. And yeah, I loved that when I was a kid. I'd watch the whole process, and then you get your bag of hot cinnamon sugar donuts. And yeah, I'd love some right now.
Oh yeah. Excellent. Rachel Yoder, I would like to point out that everyone in the comments is now calling you Yoder.
Oh, great. Wonderful.
Like every time they say something like, oh, Yoder, that's hilarious. I love it.
Oh my gosh, it's my dream come true. It takes me back to my college days. Thank you. I like Tracy. I'm a traditionalist. I love a good corn dog. I love a good funnel cake. And I always want like the largest lemonade possible because it's so hot at like 3 p.m. You're just like, can I have a gallon of the shaken lemonade? That's what I want. Yeah.
All right. Kim, how about you?
It
can't be, what was it? Locust?
Not no, I don't love my insects fried. I do love, I think I already said it, and it's just my favorite thing at the fair. The Botter's Pharmacy, which is on Ingersoll in Des Moines. They set up a little tent with not a tent, on the food court concourse with the red and white striped awning, and they get these they're gigantic chocolate cookies, and in between is peppermint ice cream with a swirl of fudge in among all the things. It is magical. It's magical. You can get one for several people. They're gigantic. Oh, so good. I want one right now. I'm agreeing with all of you. What are we doing here? We should go to the fair.
Go to the fair. I would like to say there's a comment from Laurel Swanson, and they don't have fair squares anymore.
Oh yeah,
like my heart is broken.
Yeah, I saw that. And also, somebody commented that they were laughing so hard while we were telling our book signing horror stories. I was driving, people at stoplights were looking at me like I was crazy. Well, that's what, that we're here to serve. I mean, that's our goal, to make you laugh so hard that people look at you strangely. So, so we're at the 8:00 hour. I want to wrap up with one final question for everyone. I want to give everyone on the panel a chance to just give a shout out to their favorite bookstore or bookstores where your books are available. So I'll go backwards this time, Julie. I'll start with Kim.
Okay, well, we've already had some shout outs to the remarkable Alice Meyer, who owns and runs with Hunter Beaverdale Books in Des Moines. That's my fave.
Yes. And Rachel? Yeah. Yoder?
Yes. My favorite bookstore is Prairie Lights here in Iowa City.
Shout out to Cherokee, Iowa, and the Book Vine, which is not just the coolest little bookstore I've ever seen, but also a wine bar. So really, you can't go wrong.
Yeah.
Beaverdale Books, obviously, Alice. And then also Storyhouse Book Pub in the East Village they're just doing some really amazing things down there. I was fortunate enough to be part of their author after party, as was Yoder. Even though I missed yours, Rachel, and I'm sorry, I wanted to go. I had a conflict that night. They're doing some really cool things. And since I live downtown, it's a bookstore that's walkable for me, and I like to pop in there. So both Beaverdale Books and Storyhouse Book Pub.
How about Rachel Mance McKinney?
Yeah, I have a couple. My local favorite is, I'm wearing their shirt. So Dog-Eared Books in Ames, Iowa is a lovely place to go. I will be at Storyhouse Book Pub for the first time this September, celebrating another Iowa author, Denise Williams,
who
for her
actually
book
couldn't
launch.
join us tonight. We had her on our list, and she was unable to join us tonight. Loved it.
But if you're local in the area, we're going to have a book event with her on September 16th, and then I get to go to Prairie Lights in October. So I get to just do all the bookstores that are amazing.
Because I'm last, everybody said mine. So Dog-Eared Books, because I'm also in Ames, and Beaverdale Books. Actually, this Saturday is Romance Day at the independent bookstores.
And Julie and Tracy will be there.
Yeah, so we'll be at Beaverdale, and then I'll be at Dog-Eared at night with Denise. So if you like romance, come on down.
Yeah. I'm also Central Iowa, so Beaverdale Books is my hometown bookstore, but I'm going to add Page Turners. Kathy Magruder down in Indianola is lovely to work with and has a charming little store. And they've had a lot of construction on the road in front of their store this spring, which is always hard on small businesses. So giving a shout out to Page Turners. But that concludes our second edition of Story Women of Iowa. Thank you to all our Facebook Live viewers who tuned in and listened and posted and asked questions instead of going to the fair, which I approve of personally. And we'll notify our giveaway winners in the next week or so. And everyone, please keep Heather Gudenkopf, and her family in your thoughts. This is a rough time for her family right now. But otherwise, everyone, thank you again for tuning in. Thank you to the authors who participated tonight, and everyone have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.